Well, hello everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about why I think that you should try to buy used cars from new dealers rather than used cars from used dealers. I know, sounds weird, but anyways, before we get in this video, as always, if you want to save time and money the next time you purchase a car, link to my car buying guide in the description down below. And then if you want to see more videos just like this, then I recommend you subscribe because I post content every single day. Let's get into it. So for those of you that don't know, I worked in the car business for a few years, and I worked at a new car franchise. It was a Dodge Ram store. There was also a Jeep Chrysler store next door, but it was a weird situation where the stores were split. But obviously, on top of selling the new product from Dodge and Ram, I also, had used cars on my lot that I sold quite frequently. I mean, I had so many months as a salesperson where I would sell more used cars than I sold new cars. And this taught me a lot about the dynamics with a new car dealership and how they approach the used car market versus a used car dealership, because I had to deal with used car dealerships all the time as a salesperson, because I'd have customers come in and they'd say, hey, this is what I'm looking for. And then, after looking through my lot, I'd find that I didn't have it. And so then a lot of times I'd have to go and, search online and try to find something for my customer. And it would end up being at a used car lot. And so obviously I'd, go get the car from the used car lot to show to my customer, because if you don't know, dealerships trade used cars just like they trade new cars all the time. I mean, maybe it didn't happen as much over the course of the pandemic, but prior to the pandemic, it was something that happened quite often. And so it just taught me a lot about the differences, and here's basically what I saw. So first off, with used car dealers, what I consistently experienced is that their inventory was just crappy, especially compared to the inventory that I happen to have at the dealership that I worked at. And I'm not just saying that because I worked at that dealership, it's just what I experienced getting these cars for customers. So like when I pull up to the used car lot and try to get a car for my customer, half the time I couldn't even get a key to the car because the used car dealership just never seemed to know where keys were, which is crazy. It's like, how are you going to sell this car to someone if you don't know where the key is? And then on top of that, the cars were rarely detailed. Like there'd be trash in the cars, they'd be super dirty on the outside. And it's like, again, how do you expect someone to spend 20, 30, 40, whatever amount of money the car costs on this vehicle if it's just absolutely filthy? And then they typically weren't inspected from a mechanical standpoint, and you could tell because it's like I drive 5 feet in the car and it's like suspension clunk. That would have been like instantly recognizable by any mechanic, right? Or, check engine lights, stuff like that. Or like you look at the tires and they're all mismatched. Like there's just all sorts of crazy things that I saw with these used cars. And so there are a lot of situations where I would go to get a used car for a customer. I'd take like 5 seconds looking at it and I'd be like, yeah, I'm not showing this to my customer. It's like, it's not even worth it. And then I go back and the customer would always be confused. And they're like, why didn't you bring back the car? And it's like, well, here's the deal. Mismatched tires, check engine light, suspension clunk. I know that it's cheap online, but you don't want to deal with that car. It's going to cause you more problems, and we're just going to have to find you something else. And I can tell you that as a salesperson, the only really bad surveys that I ever got were when I had a customer that was just dead set on purchasing a particular car, and it was from a used car lot that I'd gotten for them. And I explained like, hey, this is what I see. And they for some reason, they just kept pushing. And then they would, obviously take the car home, and then they'd have issues a few days down the road. And then they'd come back and they'd be mad at me. And it's like, I told you. And so I feel like that goes to show, like, it's like when I was selling used cars on my lots, never had an issue. But then when I go and sell these used cars off of these used car dealer lots, it's like constantly issues. And so it got to the point where by the end of my career, I refused to sell used cars off of used car lots. Like if a customer was wanting to look at those cars, I said, you can go deal with them. I don't want to touch that anymore, because I don't want to deal with you coming back and telling me that, well, there's a bunch of paint defects on this car that happened when you washed off the car because the used car lot put some sort of weird coating on it. Like there's just so many crazy things that they do to scam people, basically. Now, comparing that to new car dealerships, well, new car dealerships seem to do a lot more than used car lots. First off, they actually inspect vehicles. And if vehicles after inspection need a certain amount of money put into them to get them up and running and to make it so they look nice and pretty and shiny for a customer, and it's just too much, then they send those vehicles to auction. And guess who purchases those vehicles? You guessed it, used car lots. That's where used car lots get most of their inventory, is from auction. Whereas new car dealerships get most of their used car inventory from customers that are trading it in. And this is very important because, well, the reason that cars get sent to auction for the most part is because they're not in the best condition, right? That's just auction cars. Yes, you can find some decent cars at auction, but that's generally not the trend, because here's the deal. If a dealership gets a car traded in that's actually in great condition, why would they ever sell it at auction? Because they can retail it themselves and make way more money than wholesaling it at auction. And so what you typically see at most new car dealers is that the cars they have on their front line are like the nice, not necessarily like the nicest examples, but nicer examples of vehicles, especially when you compare them to, you know, similar cars at used car lots. And it's because new car dealers don't want to put a ton of money into the cars to recondition them, and they don't want to deal with negative experiences with customers, because surveys for new car dealers are way more important than for used car dealers. Because with used car dealers, you know, they want to have a good, you know, Google star rating and all that. But if they have people that give them bad reviews, then at the end of the day, it's not really going to cause them, you know, financial harm in the short term. Now, in the long term, it might cause less people to purchase from them, which obviously causes financial harm. But in the short term, it's not like they're going to, you know, have a manufacturer come and start attacking them. Whereas with new car dealerships, that can actually happen, and it has happened. So like what you'll see is, yeah, you don't have a survey to a manufacturer if you purchase a used car from a new car dealership, but if a new car dealership gets a bad enough, you know, reputation with, you know, the customer base in their area, then their manufacturer might start, you know, coming and attacking them a little bit. They're like, hey, why aren't you taking care of your customers? And obviously the manufacturer knows that, like, you know, it might not be the new cars that the dealership's having issues with, but that dealership is still representing that manufacturer. And so they're just held to, you know, more accountability compared to used car lots. And so they want to make sure that if they're selling a used car, that it's in good condition and their customer's going to be happy, because they want to make sure they have the best possible surveys so that their Google review is good, so then people will continue to buy new cars from them, and so that they stay in good standing with their manufacturer, even though those cars aren't technically being sold via the dealership from the manufacturer, if that makes sense. Obviously, certified pre-owned is a little bit different though. And then I can also tell you that personally, I have never purchased a used car from a used car lot, and I've purchased several used cars over the course of, you know, my YouTube career and my car salesman career. And the reason that I haven't is for all the reasons I stated in this video. The used cars at used car lots are typically in much worse condition, and you usually don't get cool stuff traded into used car lots as well. And that's something that's very important. Like I said, with used car lots, they're getting most of their cars from auction, which is kind of like bottom of the barrel. It's stuff that people don't really want. Whereas new car dealerships, well, they're getting most of their used inventory from people trading in vehicles. And the thing about new car dealerships getting trade-ins is they get some really nice stuff in. I'll give you some examples that I purchased over my car sales career. So one of the cool cars was a Porsche Boxster S that I got from a Toyota dealership that was in the same dealership group that I had worked for. It was a 2006, it had 27,000 miles on it, and it was mint. Like, the paint was perfect, the interior is perfect. You can go, like, just look at my old YouTube videos on it. I did some interesting modifications with the lights and everything on it to make it look a little bit more modern. But regardless, super nice car that you will never see at a used car lot, because why would a dealership send that to auction when they could, you know, obviously make a decent amount of money on it? Now, me obviously working for that group at the time meant that I got employee pricing on it, so I ended up, you know, basically driving it and selling it for what I paid for it, which was great. But again, that's a real life example. Another one is I bought a Shelby GT350 from the Ram dealership that I worked from. A customer traded that in for a brand new truck. It had like 500 miles on the odometer, so it was basically brand new. MSRP on the car was over $60,000, and I paid somewhere around like $50,000 for it at the time. And so that's another example of a car that you're just not going to see on a used car lot, or you're going to have to pay that $60,000 price if you want to get it right. You're going to pay full retail, whereas I was able to get a good deal on it because the dealership that I worked at didn't want the car. It was a Mustang. I was working at a Dodge dealership, and it was a special edition Mustang that, you know, the dealership had no experience with, right? A Ford dealership would absolutely love that car because, you know, they probably have a list of like 20 people that are waiting for a GT350, and then that would be basically a brand new one they'd be able to sell to one of their customers. But a Dodge dealership, it's like they don't really care for it. And that's something else to mention is when new car dealerships get inventory that they, you know, generally aren't familiar with, you can sometimes get some really good deals on it. Another one that I got was, you know, a Camaro ZL1 1LE. And I know I'm talking about crazy performance cars, but I guess that's just the type of used car that I like to buy because usually they depreciate a massive amount. With that Camaro, I bought it for like $20,000 under original MSRP from a Ford dealership because, again, the Ford dealership was like, we don't have a list of 20 customers. Again, if that was traded into a Chevy dealership, the Chevy dealership would have probably charged probably like $10,000 under original MSRP at that time for the car. So the point that I'm trying to make with this whole section is the quality of car you get from a new car dealership is generally way better than what you're going to get from a used car dealership. And the deals that you can get with new car dealerships is also typically better, because if you buy a car, again, from a dealership that doesn't really specialize in that type of car, they would rather just get rid of it. Again, they're more worried about selling the new cars that they have rather than the used cars. And so new car dealerships will sometimes even lose a little bit of money on a used car just to get it out of their inventory, just to get rid of it. Or sometimes they'll even sell it to you at wholesale price because they would rather sell it to a customer than send it off to auction, because at least with a customer, they have another car deal to put on their books, which ultimately always makes dealers look better in the long run. The more cars that they sell, the better. The more cars they wholesale, not necessarily the better. So that's pretty much going to sum things up for today's video, and I guess that I want to finish off with saying that I'm not claiming that you should just never buy from a used car lot, because like I said, you can find some great deals and some great cars at used car lots. That's just not the general rule, and that's definitely not what I saw when I worked in car sales. And so no matter, if you're buying a used car from a used car lot or a used car from a new car dealership, you always want to, go and look at the car in person, get inspected, take all the normal steps so that you make sure you're not purchasing something that you shouldn't based on the condition, or, something that's mechanically wrong with it. But I just would, probably pay a little bit more time and attention to the new car dealer inventory, and build some relations with these new car dealers, because like I said, there's a lot of inventory that new car dealers get that they never post online, because they basically just have a list of people that they call as soon as they get certain vehicles traded in, and it just goes without being posted online. And those are sometimes the best possible deals. And I can tell you one that I personally didn't purchase, but I sold to a customer at a dealership, was a Corvette Z06 with the Z07 package. I guess we're talking about a bunch of sports cars in today's video, but that's just how things go occasionally. And with this vehicle, it had an original MSRP of like over $100,000, and it only had like a few hundred miles. No, it was like a couple thousand miles on it actually. And we got it traded in, and we were going to sell it to a Chevy store, right? Because it was a Corvette. But instead, we basically sold it to one of our customers, and they bought it for substantially under retail value. And that customer would have never had access to that car had they not been a customer of our dealership. And we never post that car online, by the way. Like, that car never got posted on the website. It was, again, going to just go straight to a Chevy dealership. So you always want to build those relationships, and you always want to look, right? That's how you get the deals in the car world. Anyways,